Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's March 5th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and I'm doing this a little early. It's not quite 3 o'clock yet, but it's into our 2 o'clock hour, and so I'm going to go ahead and do this. There's a basketball game tonight I'd like to see, so I'm going to try to do this and wrap it up and get out of here a little bit early today. But in the end, it's just a range day today. Most of the resistance was across this level here, 27.96 or so. And most of the support down here around 27.85, a little above 27.85. And then you can see this clear midline at 27.90 and a quarter, it looks like maybe. But you can see it working both sides of that. And really, most of the price action worked off of that particular price level across there, that midline today. Um, Generally, on a range day, you want to mostly look for sales off the highs and buys off the bottoms. And unfortunately, most of your bounces came off the midline. First, we were working the low end, then we've been working the high end since. We actually looked like we were going to head lower again. But the thing you got to be careful with is the midline is not nearly as reliable as the support and the resistance areas. This switches back and forth, and you can see it's acting as support, then it acts as resistance across here, then support. Looks like it's going to be resistance again, and so it goes back and forth. So if you do sell it, you want to make sure there's some kind of test or double test type deal, something that proves that it's uh, that it's either acting as support or resistance, and you want to enter in that direction. And you got to be careful there because those fail more than any of them. But early on, what I would have done, we had this nice channel working down, even though it looked like there was a possibility there could be a range. At this point, when this is working down, this is clear and obvious, and this looks like the dominant pattern at that point in time. So that's what you're playing, really. Um, Once we got a little break in the correction and started heading lower, first thing I would do is measure this leg, come over here, and if we go lower, that's going to be my target. That's going to be my near-term target, which would have been around 27.78. But you can see the support held, and we never could get below there. Then we ran back up, and we couldn't even get back to the overnight highs. The resistance continued to hold right along this line here where we held at the open, which that opening high right there held the rest of the day. We pushed through it a few times by a few ticks, but it still holds for the most part. So um, really, once we were going across here, it was obvious that we were at least in a range here between here and here temporarily. But when we went higher, just measure this lower part, and the way I usually do that is I'll just draw a little arrow right here, like so, and I'll bring it up, and you can see there's your perfect measured move right there. So that would be your target. That's the way we do ranges. This is the way we do trends here. Try to get the legs, and then we do ranges. And a lot of times you can even get legs within the ranges. So just to give you an example, this one looks like there's your first leg. Then we look for your second leg right here, and you can see we got a tick or two more than a measured move there, but you can even get legs within the ranges too, so watch for those. But when we didn't go lower here, a lot of times that's a sign that we're going to go in the other direction. Today it didn't turn out that way, but that would have given you a reason to maybe look to get long here. But anyway, that's how you would analyze this early on. Let's back out here, talk about the trades. Okay, the 7 o'clock hour came right about in this swing low right here, and we were working down. Of course, it looks like there's a possible close outside and a little move to a lower, but we come back up, and we try to go higher once, twice, and then suddenly you get a second entry short. Notice that new low there, first entry, and second entry. So you could look at this at a couple of times to go higher as a failed second entry long, and then and then it's actually a second entry short, and I like going short right there. And at that point, I would look for another leg like this one here. That would be my near-term target. You can see we went much further than that. So, um, but that's a nice setup. If you catch that one, you get a runner. And then notice we make a new low here. This is actually a double bottom, so that's like a new low right there. And then first entry, and then second entry. And it looks like it's right about where you would expect there to be a trend line there. I drew this line here first and then drug it up, and it looked like I was off a little bit there. But a lot of times when you get a little break outside of it during the overnight session, you might get back in it during the regular session and continue on. So I'd want to see it play out, basically. So anyway, another nice move down there, and then or another nice move here. This one you may or may not have caught a runner, but makes another new low, and then first entry, and it tries to go higher. And while that's not a textbook second entry, it's still a second entry short. And you probably would have wanted to wait on this bar. Look how bearish it is. Your stop still has to go above the swing high, which those are matching, so it doesn't matter. They're basically the same spot. One of these, it was a little different. I can't remember which one it was, but you had to put it above the bar next to it. But again, you probably get a runner here. And you try to go higher once, you try to go higher twice, and this is another second entry short. I marked this one in green. We are in this, coming off this midline here, and it's still holding, but there's not a lot of room to this low. There's barely enough room to get out. So I just think this one's a little risky. It's a little bit aggressive. So if you've got enough room to get out, then maybe you go ahead and take that one without questioning it, because it is off a key entry point, being that midline down through there. But without having a whole lot of room here, mine's real questionable. I think there's just enough to get out, but I'd still a little bit leery of that one. So then we bounce, and you go right through the trend line this time, and you come back to this trend line. There's a little short-term trend line here, and that's a failed second entry short, a nice bullish bar. I like going long right there. At this point, you'd figure we're probably trying to go up and test the highs again. Quick, easy scalp, and then it fails. I did mark that one green because you could look at that as the first break of this trend channel, because this one, a lot of times in the overnight, they don't count. So just remember that. You'll get some overshoots and stuff in the overnight sometimes because the market's so thin, it's so much easier to move it. But once you get to the regular opening, if you had a little break like that or a close outside, I would consider it possibly being enough to consider it a convincing close outside. But anyway, I had a little interruption there, and I think this was the last trade we talked about. You would figure we're probably headed back to test these highs. Didn't turn out that way, but we move up. We get a break of this trend line right here. You really notice how we went right on through the EMA, and then we pull back, and you get a nice bearish bar on a lower high, and you can see it holding across that support resistance line right there. It holds. It acted as resistance twice right here. So I like taking that down, and there's one where you're just looking for, see if you possibly get another measured leg right there. There's leg one, and there's leg two. We missed it by a tick or two. Actually, by the time we made the low, it's a perfect measured move, because we got a little break here and then pushed down for a new low. And by that, it makes a perfect measured move there. I would have exited here when it started bouncing, but most likely, but we still got a perfect measured move there. Anyway, you get a You could look at this as a failed second entry long, and it looks like it probably would have worked. But with that being the overnight low and we bounced there a couple of times and just bounced right here, I'm not going to risk that little bit for an extra tick or two. And of course, we get the break outside, it move up first entry, and then there's a second entry short here. But that bar is not, it's too neutral to almost more bullish than it is bearish. We closed in the upper half of that bar, and it's got a lot of stem. Even though it was a nice second entry that worked, I'm not going to take that trade. I like the bounce here, but again, we get a very neutral bar, and you're working up, and we're still finding some resistance here. You can see there's a lower high here, and that's tempting. That's a second entry short, but we just came off this low a couple of different times here, and we pushed through that time. So I'm probably not going to take that trade. It's one you could argue to be green. Just because it's a second entry and it is acting as resistance there, I'll go ahead and mark it as green. But I really think you're better off to wait, because prices are probably going to continue to try to push higher here. We've done bounce multiple times here, but notice we run down and we bounce again, and now you can call this a double test of this level. And you get a relatively bullish bar, and it's a second entry long. Notice that high, first entry, second entry. And we're a little away from the EMA as well, so I like that one. And then it runs back up, and of course we find resistance here again. And you made a lower high each time, and that's a huge bearish bar. So we'll probably come back down to the lows again. So I like going short there. And then we make a first entry, and then a second entry, and it fails right there. And you could really look at this, even though there's a second entry that triggered right here, you could still look at this like a second entry short. This one's tempting to go long and short here, but there's so many failures in there. I'm not crazy about any of them. I did mark this one because we've been going between the lows and the highs. It looks like we're starting the range right here. And this is a lower high. Notice how each one of those highs is lower. And so I really thought we'd shoot on down. So I went ahead and made that one red. Originally, I think I had it marked as green. It would have worked. You got just enough ticks there. You wouldn't have got one extra tick out of that one, though, and then it bounces. And there's actually a failed second entry short right there. But we didn't come back and test that support yet. And that's a very neutral to almost bearish bar. It actually closes in the lower half. It's not quite even closing in the middle. If you move this line over, you can see that's almost a perfect doji if it had closed one tick higher. So it's more negative than it actually is neutral. And then we just kind of went in this sideways stuff, and you don't want to be entering in that, even though we break out and go higher. So you just really don't get a good opportunity to go long here. And of course it runs up here, it makes a high right around where the some previous resistance was in there. And we make a lower high and a big bearish bar, and look how far away we are from the EMA. I like going short right there. And because this is all played out, we got to close outside a new high, and then we got a lower high, double top, bearish bar, way away from the EMA. It's been a range day, so I like that one. And that's a pretty nice move. Probably get a runner there. And where does it bounce? Right at the midline. It bounces a second time. There's actually a second entry long right there, but I'd want to see a double test, and we don't get that till we actually get a double test right here. So you could have entered here. And if you did enter there, I still like this other one right next to it. So you could have entered either place, really. This is the better entry right here, because now you got a double bottom and a higher low, and you've watched that support hold 1, 2, 3 times rather than just twice. So really you can enter on either one of those or both of them. And look at it. Where does it go? Right back up to the highs again. Turns down. I marked this one green. Again, you're way away from the EMA. It's not quite bear. It's more bearish than it is neutral, but it could have closed one tick higher. It may be 2 ticks there, and it would be a real neutral bar. So that one's just iffy, but you could really kind of look at this as a double test because we made this these highs here, but that's a lot of space in there. I'd really like to see a double test from here or from this location. So that would just be one test, but you could still look at that as a double test. There's some reasons to like that one. Um, it's pretty obvious what the range is now. And by being a little aggressive, you may catch that important high of the day. And I'd measure this leg, then look for this one. I think we measured this one earlier. Look for a measured leg. Yeah, see it went a little bit further. But I would look for this to at least come back down here. And it actually shoots through, and it looks like it's going to hold. But guess what? It shoots back through there and holds on the other side, gives you a higher low, and it closes above this, above the EMA. I like going long, just looking for it to go back to the highs again. And it's working up. You get a failed second entry short here. And so this, when it broke above this signal bar, I like going long there. Doesn't matter what the signal bar looks like on that failure. It actually comes back, but you would have been stopped out by that time. And I don't think I would re-enter there. So anyway, you might consider entering there. I'm not going to mark it. There's not much room back to the top here. Actually, from here there is, but it's not a really good signal bar. It's just a first entry. You know, if you had a little, if it had ticked back here and then turned up and you had enough room, maybe. But I think you probably skipped that. And that got you into the 2 o'clock hour. You can see now we made it to the top, and now we're selling off, and we may make it back down here before the market closes. It's after 3, so they probably run most of the day traders out by now. Most of them have all had to close down. So it's probably going to slow down going into the last 10 or 15 minutes here. But anyway, basically a range day to day. Several good trades here, especially early on. There was some pretty good trading. Really from about a little after 10. There were, but well, there were still 4 or 5 trades in here as well. So during the lunch hour into 2 o'clock. So not a bad trading day at all. Actually, there's a lot of trades here if you look at it. I typically prefer the sales from here and the buys from here, but you just didn't get that today. The midline was really the pivot point all day long. We were either in the bottom quadrant or the upper quadrant, and you got to be careful on those. So you generally want some kind of double test. You want at least see it acting as support if you're going long and resistance if you're going short. So, and you want good setup bars like always, good signal bars. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.